Before we begin, I'd like to give a tribute to Charlie Davis. Charlie was a life member of the West Otago Vintage Club, and I think he was there when it all started. He was also a member of the Dancing Tractors group, and we saw the dancing tractors at various events around the country. And every time we went to Tapanui, Charlie hosted us. So here's to Charlie. Good on you, mate. Rest in peace. With me is Ray J McNae, and welcome to the show, Ray. And Ray's going to be with us for this entire show. He's our host and guide, and we've arrived in this little place near Brisbane. I suppose that's the nearest we could put it down to. And this place has got a few old machines for us to look at. But what we're going to start off with is this machine called a Bearcat. And you might remember well, quite a number of shows ago, we were doing a cranes show called Cranes and All, and this is part of the part of the crane show. It's a bucket that doesn't dig like the old buckets do, with a bucket with lifted it up and then the bottom fell out of it and dumped it onto a truck. It actually comes the other way, like the diggers do today. It comes in and scoops it up and then puts it wherever they're going to put it. And there's a word for that, Ray.
It's called a backhoe, sir.
A backhoe.
This is one of the very first.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a crowding bucket, which is a feature that came in later, and a lot of these were retrofitted with hydraulic systems to allow that. That gives you a lot of greater breakout force.
Yes.
These machines were the ones that took the job off men digging trenches.
And this has got to be 500% better than...
Every little bit, and able to lift out pieces of stiffer ground that would require crowbars and a lot more sweat.
Exactly. So, looking into this machinery, there's gears, there's pulleys, there's clutches, there's all sorts of things in here to make that boom do.
And not a piece of shielding.
No shielding. No. It's got a tin roof. I suppose that's thinking of the driver a wee bit.
It's solar protection.
And if I get up on this, I'll just see if I can get up on here.
Of course, there's not a fold-down ladder or...
No, but if I get up in here, and the driver's station is here, folks. There's a wooden seat, and the engine is here, so it's roaring right in the driver's ear. I'll just see if I can get in there, probably not. No, but just looking from the driver's point of view, straight ahead here, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 levers, 1, 2, 3 foot pedals, and that's him. There's some spinning levers, wheels up in front of me. They're not quite sure what they do.
They
but
provide steering.
From back here. Okay, so I guess once you've got this thing in place, it's in place and it can do a job from there. But looking over there, there's a brake clutch thing, and he'd have to, how he gets over there, I'm not quite sure, without getting himself mangled to death. But somebody would have had to operate this in 1918 when they built it. So as Ray was saying, beats the hell out of shovels. Doesn't matter how complicated it is or how it's put together, it beats the hell out of shovels. And I see it's got wire ropes to sort of operate that boom out the front there, a wire rope for the main boom, and a little rope that comes in, and I guess that bucket goes in and out on that wire rope. And it's just interesting that they still make wire rope. You thought wire rope would have been long gone and surpassed by hydraulics and other things, but no, they still make wire rope. Somebody's thought of this. Somebody's gone through this whole machine now. We need something that does that, something that does this, and something that does that. Now we can't have that doing that unless there's something to stop it. So that's why the whole thing's been put together.
And you can analyse it. You don't need a circuit diagram.
So now you've drawn it, now you've got to make it. Amazing.
And you notice that everything's riveted. There was no welding in 1918.
No, absolutely not.
No diesel engines. It's a Hercules petrol engine. with a magneto.
And Hercules went into Diamond Tees and other trucks, and
very popular vendor.
If you bought enough of them, they would put your logo on the manifold, young Hercules. So, yeah, amazing. Well, there you go, folks. This is called a Bearcat. It's a piece of Australian history. It was built in Ohio in America by the
Bears Machine Company.
The Bears Machine Company.
What these machines did was they trenched and allowed sewers and provided health for a growing nation. In London, they did it all manually with Irishmen. The Americans, no, they mechanised. Everything was done with machines. This Bearcat, that was the first machine that started laying sewers and gave health to America.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. On the same property, they've got this old AEC Matador. And AEC was a popular engineering company back in the day, and they made buses, they made trucks, they made all sorts of things. But I think they had an association also with Gardner engines, Ray.
Yeah, I believe you're correct.
AEC made their own engines, but a lot of the vehicles that we've looked at over the years who had an AEC have had a Gardner engine in it, and I think the 5-cylinder diesel was a popular one. And I think having odd number cylinders, they're easier to tune than even number cylinders. Have you heard that, Ray?
That's correct. 3 and 5 balance better mathematically.
That's interesting, isn't it? Odd number. You wouldn't think so, but that's the way it is. But anyway, just having a look in this cab. First of all, this seat is hard up against as far as it will go. You can't do anything with it. It won't go up, it won't go down. And so if you've got a job driving this, I'd probably have to turn it down because the steering wheel is pressing right into my guts, and I doubt if I could probably turn it with where that is. However, having said that, it's also like AEC, they have a sort of an offset steering. So if I'm sitting here, the steering wheel isn't exactly in front of me, it's actually off to the side a wee bit. And there were trucks called a Nubian, which was a fire truck in Norfolk Island. Thornycroft made Nubians, and they too had a slightly off to the centre, off centre steering wheel, just like this one. It's got a great little dashboard, some gauges, and pretty much when you're sitting in the off-sided seat, it just looks like a great big box. It's got a gear stick comes straight up out of the floor, and like AEC's Leylands of this era, when you changed gear, it was first and then
a third of the weight of the engines in the flywheel.
And if you didn't actually time it like that, it just went and you had to stop and start again, which is always embarrassing. It hasn't got any diff locks or 2-speed diffs or anything. It's just 5-speed gearbox. Interesting looking diff on the back there.
It's a worm wheel creation.
Oh, okay.
Worm and wheel, not a pinion and crown wheel as you'd get in a modern vehicle. Was originally assigned as a street sweeper in Sydney. Oh. Hence the wheelbase, and the maximum speed is 38 mile an hour. And the 9-litre diesel engine is really swinging at 38 mile an hour. So the 6 speeds are quite adequate.
Yep.
This truck actually, when it was decommissioned by the Sydney Council, was assigned to long distance work and ran Brisbane out of Sydney with a single axle 34-foot trailer hauling product. So it'd be
at 38 miles an hour.
At 38 mile an hour maximum. And that would only be achieved in very brief moments on the roads of the period.
Yeah, I suppose if going up a hill, you'd have to boom, 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 boom down to third.
If not low.
Really?
Because there was not much intervention in those days, so if it fit, it shipped.
Yeah, fair enough. So it looks a massive truck. I mean, to look at it, you think, wow, that's big and powerful, but it's not really.
No. No, it would be less than 100 horsepower out of the 9-litre engine, very primitive engine.
Wow.
But in its period, it was diesel and it was reliable compared to the gasoline engines that we used.
And I must say the people who have restored this have done an absolute wonderful job. Well, it looks absolutely stunning.
Interesting
Anyway.
point, the cab was made by the agent. These were sent out as a cowl, what they called a cowl,
Just to
the dash.
Yep.
And Hastings Deering, who were the AEC people at the period, they built the cab. As the plaque inside will attest.
Yeah, yep.
Later became Caterpillar dealers and very successful, rather studious, abandoning AEC for Caterpillar.
Okay. I think AEC, when did I think they died at some stage along with Leyland and...
Well, they were absorbed by Leyland.
Yes.
Originally safe manufacturers.
Oh, okay. Really?
That's got them into metalwork, and of course everyone jumped on the wagon building automotive stuff.
Sure.
Air brakes too, which was something quite innovative for the period.
That's right, and I just see a little air brake lever just in here, and there's also got a little stop lever here, which means it pops up if there's not enough air, and when there is enough air, it just disappears, and you can carry on. But looking out this this window, it's got a bonnet that's sort of V-shaped, and so you look down the side of the mudguard. It's a lot like the Scammell. Remember the Scammell, 1960 Scammell that we looked at, and they hauled out of a paddock in the middle of nowhere, took it to Christchurch, and that Scammell's the same as this. You can look down the side of the mudguard. It's got a V-shaped bonnet, and yeah. So,
Interesting thing on this truck is the air compressor for the brakes is run off the transmission,
Really?
not the engine.
really?
So you've got to be driving for you to have brakes. If you pull up at the traffic lights, you're not moving, you're not making air. So it's subsequently been retrofitted with an electric pump to compensate for that. Modern traffic won't allow you the graciousness of driving off to make brakes.
Good God. Anyway, there's the train off to nowhere, so we'll have a look at what's next. Well, here I am in the cafe, and it's just like going back to 1950. The chairs of the time, Formica I think it's all called, and the black and white floors. There's Elvis Presley over there, there's a jukebox over there, there's memorabilia behind me, that beautiful montage of cars behind me. There's even an old Dodgem. Remember the Dodgems that they used to show? Boom, boom, boom. Wonderful. And I'm having a big breakfast. It's bacon and eggs. And so if you come here with your group to have a look at the museum, you can sit down and have a wonderful meal before you even start. So look at that. Bacon and eggs, sausages, tomatoes, toast, mushrooms, the whole 9 yards. And a cup of tea to wash it all down. So there you go. When you come here, come and have a meal first and then enjoy yourself in the museum. Christmas isn't all that far away, and so if you're looking for a present for the truck driver or somebody interested in transport in your life, then my Talking Trucks book might be just the thing. So if you'd like a copy, just email me, billhohepper@extra.co.nz, and I'll take your details and I'll get a copy in the post to you. Now this book covers trucks basically heading back from about 1972 to the time they started making vehicles. So a good historical book, and tells you all about the New Zealand transport industry up until about 1972. So for a Christmas present, perfect. Email me, billhohepper@extra.co.nz. Just very quickly, in the back of this shed we've got this old road roller, and in the 1920s, 30s, this was when this machine's time, and before this they had steam rollers, and so it had a steam engine to make it all go, but it rolled the roads and what have you, and for some reason the word steamroller has been associated with road rollers ever since. And so just going down the road, you see a road roller working, you go, oh look, there's a steamroller. And it's just that steamroller describes a road roller. So I just thought I'd show you this diesel powered road roller. Don't know what it weighs, but it'd be quite a few ton. And they use this to roll the tar seal roads nice and flat, and then they put the tar seal on them. But as I said, nickname, steamroller. Just before we were looking at a Bearcat, and it was a backhoe. Now I'm sitting in a reasonably modern drag line, and the drag line bucket's sitting over there, but You might remember we were down with Sid Hogg and he was showing me the ins and outs of how to be a dragline operator, cleaning the silt out of a canal, and he could throw that bucket he just with his little levers, and the bucket would go right to the other side, drop down, and then drag in the silt, and then he'd pull it out and dump it on the back of a truck. And he's doing it with all these little levers, and his levers would have been sort of hydraulic, but these levers are all operate clutches and brakes and everything else. So this is all mechanical, I suppose. So just slew it around and chuck the bucket on, sort of pushing all these levers. Bucket hit the door, hit the floor, and then you pull some more levers and you drag the bucket back up, and then you swing it around and dump the material in a pile or on the back of a truck, and off you go again. But comparing this to the Bearcat, this is absolute luxury. I'm sitting on a very fancy seat, but normally this would have a steel seat, like an old tractor seat, to sit in for the day, and some of them just have what looked like a bicycle seat, just a little bicycle seat to sit on and operate your drag line. And so this machine is called a Ruston Bucyrus, and if you're sort of standing beside one, a lot of guys said rusting beside us was the nickname for these machines. But anyway, I'm just comparing this to the Bearcat and just saying absolute luxury in comparison. Ray, this is a trailer. It's looks like it's been made in the 1918 period through the 20s. It's cast. It's all held together with nuts and bolts, and weighs a ton. And so maybe you just describe what this is.
This is before dump trucks, before they had any method to dump. It's a belly dumper. A little hard to see. There's all winches and cables, and the bottom doors open up, allow the material to fall through. Early machines like the dragline would load this, be pulled by a tractor, maybe a team of them. There's a hand winch on the back to close the doors back up again, but you just load it with gravel, take it to the site, open the doors, it falls straight out the bottom, and on you go.
So he'll be moving while it's all falling out,
sure.
Keeps it relatively smooth. But just at a glance, this actually looks quite modern. You know,
very much so.
Yeah, but the odd thing about this, folks, is it's got tracks either side. So it runs on tracks, not wheels. And I doubt if they braked, are they?
No.
No, just free running tracks.
The tracks give you flotation on some of the dubious ground you're going to be working this on, so it doesn't sink in.
Yeah, so if you look down in there, it's got a wooden floor, and they do that. Interesting stuff. Good old history. Another piece of, well, this is Australian history, but if you know of any of these in New Zealand, there's my contact details. Give me a yell. Love to come and see it. There you go. Thanks, Ray. Well, I've come into the museum now, and just looking around, there's all sorts of cars from the 50s and 60s, 30s. There's a couple of 20s in here even, and it's a magnificent collection. So there's lots and lots of stuff in this museum for you to look at. Lots and lots of stuff that's going to take you right back to the day. And if you're new, well, there's lots of stuff here about New Zealand history. So if you come here, you're coming to Railside Place, which is off Rifle Range Road in Hamilton. Certainly worth a look if you belong to a car club or some sort of a club and you want a place to go. This is the place to come, and you can start off with a meal in the cafe. Come and have a look, enjoy yourselves. I absolutely recommend it. What we've got here, folks, is another AEC. And
the remains thereof.
The remains thereof, exactly. But there's a very old AEC down in the Gisborne Transport Museum in Gisborne that's in about the same state as this, but it has a completely different cab. And Ray, this is a local made cab. This would have just come as...
colonially built, they call it.
Yeah. And it's obviously made of, they've cut it all out and made it to fit.
Well, it would have come in as a scuttle, so it would have had this piece here and the dash.
Yep.
And all the remainder would have been locally sourced.
They did a pretty good job of it. I mean, nice big windows, sun visor.
Yeah.
What sort of work would this have been on the road train business at the time? Or?
I imagine it could have been. It's had a turntable on it looking at the corrosion.
Yeah, yeah.
A mechanical detective, I'm looking at all the remains and scars it's endured.
And it's got a speed stripe.
Indeed, that would help.
That makes it go faster, of course. Painted yellow, not red. Although there is red here and it looks like the yellow's been painted over it, but who knows. But anyway, it's just another example of history. Late 40s, early 50s, this would have been in use, and it would have looked absolutely spectacular when it was brand new, and it would have worked its butt off for 12, 13 years, and then ended up in here, and it's just deteriorated as time goes by. Now, if you go up past Whangarei to Kamo, on the right-hand side in a paddock, there's an AEC looking very dead. When I looked at it about 20 years ago, it was fine, it was restorable, but now it's just sort of just collapsed into rust. But anyway, Ray?
Here's an interesting feature. They use springs for the radiator. We use fins today, and this is an early attempt. Very effective radiator. The tube transfers the heat to the springs, which has a lot more area. And there you go. It's radiating through all these little springs wrapped around the tubes. Still right? In use today in a number of industries. But an interesting radiator. Nothing like you'd get in your Toyota. It's all big cast tanks and bolts together, braced, of course, against and isolated in these mounts. But quite an interesting engineering feat in itself.
You might remember, folks, we were looking at the Scammell that worked on the wharf down in New Plymouth, and it too had a...
It's a spring-style radiator.
Yeah, so all
the tubes are just surrounded by springs, being soldered on, and that all the heat walks out to the big areas, the air flows around everything, and of course it can radiate the heat.
Do you know you're the only person so far that's actually explained that to me, how that works? Otherwise it just looked like, oh, that's a nice fluffy radiator.
Well,
now I know the purpose.
Only in the 1980s, Leader were using them in their heavy haul trucks because they're a very efficient radiator.
Wow. Yeah.
But we get so impressed with our technology, we forget simple things that work really well, and this is one of them.
Wow. So these had their day gone by the by, and we're all up to the.
Well, we're too smart now.
Yeah,
we use
right.
fins that block up.
So
the dust won't settle in these.
I just remember the old FF Austin I had a little cover, little canvas cover on the front that you sort of stuck on first thing in the morning, and the cover helped the engine sort of warm up, and then you sort of clicked it up and it was out of the way.
Manual thermostat.
And then some of the modern trucks had the little louvers out the front that the computer says you're hot, the louver's open.
It was a little more simpler than a computer. It was a simple little oil cell. When the oil got hot and expanded, it opened an air valve, and the air valve opened the shutters, allowed the air to flow.
You might remember, folks, we went to America, and the bloke was showing us the radiator systems with the louvers. That's just what reminded me of that. But
well, the new intercooled engines, you can't use them anymore because you need airflow all the time.
Sure.
So the shutters fell by the wayside.
Yes, and lots, like you look at a modern truck today, it drives itself practically.
I rely on that fact.
These things are sort of 6-speed,
yes.
Slow as hell.
Yeah, very hands-on.
Yeah, so that's why a lot of guys are deaf, because that big engines are sitting right beside them. And this all going in this here, so they're deafer in their left ear than
Don't talk on the
right
side, I can't hear you.
Sorry?
What? Here's something we don't see very often in modern trucks. This is your control centre. It's a CAV product. They were featured on the Vickers-Vigor bulldozers, and Atkinson's used them, all these English things. You see, we're trapped in a little cockpit here with a parking brake on one side and a frantically used gear lever on the other, and various controls in the middle there to terrify you. But right behind you, we have a starter button, all your controllers for your generator, and all your fuses and links were beside you and behind you in this little box. It usually covered up, but there's something you won't see in anything else in British vehicles of the period.
Wow. It looks like he's changed that gear lever so often that he's worn the top off it. Yeah. But typical, British, they pull that handbrake on. It's now here, and you've got to climb over the bloody thing to get out, And
chances are you'd end up on your noggin with your feet still in the cab.
Yeah, asking for some help. Help.
Well, these trucks used to run where there were no bridges too. So you'd rush as fast as you can to get to the next barge to get across a river, and no sleep and hurtling along at 25 mile an hour with 35 tonne, and this poor old AEC bellowing away, and you're trying to get to the barge before he knocked off and went home to have a beer so you could get across to the next barge.
And as I say, that engine screaming its head off right beside you. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's have a look at the back. Ray, these are tyres from the period?
My word, they're cross rib.
Cross rib.
Cross rib pattern, they're called.
This is what they would have had in the army trucks, like the GMCs, that sort of something.
Very
like that.
similar. This is a highway traction. Before asphalt, we're running on gravel, and you needed traction to climb hills.
Right.
So that's a self-cleaning.
Yeah. We were talking recently about the rubber band drive, and it had a thing
pulley
in there,
in there,
a pulley in there, and it went to the pulley on the lazy axle in front of it, and they had a belt that went between the. Do you have anything like that here?
Yes.
You did. Awesome. Was it successful?
Well, before they could really develop power dividers and through drives, that was one of the methods to get a tandem drive and ride on the differential.
Yeah, right. I guess it must have added a bit of pull.
Yeah.
Anyway,
traction's always an issue.
This is Australia, and Australia is a very big place, and so it looks like this fuel tank is just a little bit bigger than what would probably normally go on it. So this maybe suggests that this might have been a long haul truck.
It very likely in its period it would have been quite a candidate to roam between cities.
Now for me to tell how much fuel I've got, do I have to get out and read this?
In its day when it was all complete, that would give you a pretty good indication of the contents.
Yep, and the old plastic bottle.
And of course it wasn't necessary to lock the cap when diesel was 4 cents a gallon.
Ray, just tell me what this is.
This is a very English creation, aluminium cast oil bath air cleaner.
Okay.
Of course, cast into it are instructions to engine. That's filtered air. Yep. We can follow the missing components. There's a piece here and a piece here. The rubber hoses and things would have connected it all, and there would have been a snorkel. That would be the intake there.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of options where we can move it around, but there's oil in the bottom there and a number of mesh cages to catch any errant dust that may wander into the air intake and paralyse the life of the engine.
Well, there you go. Somebody's thinking the whole time, but as I was saying, AEC, that was a pretty prominent truck manufacturing company back in the time. As I said, they also made buses, and we've seen quite a number of them in our travels.
AEC started making safes. They were a big safe maker.
Right.
Of course, robbing a bank you come up against AEC technology.
Oh. Oh well, Ray, that was absolutely marvellous. What we're going to do now, folks, is Ray's got some more trucks and things for us to go and look at. So let's go exploring Australia.
Hey, good deal. Let's go.